What I'd like to do is, did anyone come to any of my other talks in security? Last year or the year before? Okay, so a whole new crowd. So what I normally do is a full Q&A. So I let people ask me questions and I answer whatever security-related, network-related things I can for you. I developed the entire security platform for Vitelity and continue to update it on an ongoing basis. I think with a lot of the security stuff going on right now, has anyone heard of the DDoS stuff going on right now? No? Okay, well, we have several of our competitors who are consistently being DDoSed at the moment, actually, crippling one of them to complete outage for nearly 2 weeks. So, this is stuff that Vitality's been dealing with for many years just because of the sector we're in, because we're the largest Asterisk-supported network. We get a lot of the startups in the hacker community and, whole wide range of different type of clientele. So, questionnaire is actually being passed around right now. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, one sec. They're supposed to bring you a mic.
I'll speak up.
Okay.
My question is really simple. That is, what kind of attack would bring a qualified SIP provider down for 2 weeks? The basic analogy of this attack.
Sure. So the attack that's brought the current provider down is a modification of the DNS bomb attack, which is basically just overloading the servers with so much pretend SIP traffic that it takes up all the CPU cycles. What's that?
SIP float. You know what SIP floating?
SIP floating?
SIP float.
Okay. So SIP floating. So that's the current attack that has crippled one of our competitors, which I'm not going to mention.
And why are they unable to stop that?
They're unable to stop it because most likely they just don't have security conscious personnel. So people who are used to dealing with DDoS or used to dealing with attacks that have to be mitigated in real time. And we received our first DDoS attack about 2 years ago. So even then we were prepared. One of my closest and best friends is actually the #1 DDoS mitigation expert in the country. So I do have an upper hand, but my background is security and network. And okay, any other? Next question.
Can you just give us an overview of what you guys have in place, and just as a, just say that you got, what kind of things that you guys have implemented, just as a general practice that prevent you from that type of thing?
Okay, so yeah, what we do to prevent these sorts of things and what kind of actions we're taking to prevent this exact kind of attack. Well, we do a couple different things. First, we do I wrote some algorithms that parse every incoming SIP packet, and then based on special criteria, we decide special criteria, how many times this people's connecting, things like are they connecting with random data? Is it garbage? Is it this or that? We allow all the packets to go through the first few times. Then the next, once they hit a certain threshold, or once they send a bunch of registration packets and none of them connect, or none of them actually have a successful registration on the network, then we actually send an event to our core router to block the source IP. And this can happen within 5 to 10 seconds. So even the people who are hosted in our owned data centers get this service automatically. So if a scan comes through, within 5 seconds, our core router has it blocked. So, that's one of the things we do for scanning, obvious hacks. The other side of it is if we get a DDoS attack that represents a large scale, completely spoofed source IP addresses, completely unable to block based on source, too many sources, that sort of thing. What we do is the network turns over to a black whitelist. So we blacklist the entire world, and then we start whitelisting known connected IP addresses. We whitelist IP. So if somebody's on a soft phone and they switch IP addresses, the first couple registrations will actually block, the network will totally block them. And then as our software sees that it's RFC compliant, that it's probably a customer, then they get added to a whitelist. And then they're allowed to register. So that, minus taking down our 30 gigabit IP network with a full-on DDoS, it's pretty hard to circumvent a black whitelist. Does that answer your question? Cool. Next question.
We've got a roving mic. We've got a roving mic here that should work. I hope it's not working. It was working. Let's try this again. There we go. We've got a roving mic. We'll pass around if people have questions so that everybody can hear the question.
Does anyone have any questions?
One of the topics was one of the topics was about having security with your providers or third-party companies that you deal with. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that security is passed on throughout the chain of command if you have other providers that are providing you like SIP trunks, other, like I said, third-party providers?
Are you asking from the, what do we do? Like what in a general sense, or what just from our perspective?
What should be expected?
Well, I think that the major problem is that even though it's not that new, it's still pretty new. And I think we're just seeing the first real lines of security-related issues. So, I mean, as far as companies like us, other SIP trunk providers, I don't think that they're very security conscious right now. So what we expect from our vendors is, IP-related interconnects. Well, we require that our providers filter their routers, 50, 60, that sort of thing, just so they're only allowing their direct customers to connect to their network. So then security really isn't a huge concern on that end. The other side of it is that we only deal with other major CLECs. We have CLEC status in a few states, and then we interconnect with other major CLECs. And generally, in the CLEC arena, the CLECs really protect the connection between them and their customer. So for us, it's not a huge concern, just because our providers are already doing pretty much what we would want. And from a SIP provider perspective, I think just if you're looking at another provider, just asking them the right questions. What sort of things do they do inside their network to protect against hacking, DDoS? Ask them, what they would do if they were DDoSed, that sort of thing. I think that, like I said, it's all new. I don't think, or SIP wasn't really invented for what it's being used for. So right now, I don't think there's a lot anybody is doing about it. somebody over there that had a question?
From the standpoint of being a small soft switch carrier, acting as a carrier, what are the kind of primary, secondary, tertiary steps you would take to guard your own network? And I heard you say one just a moment ago, and that was make sure the IP addresses that you're accepting are the ones on the list, the deny versus permit, idea. But could you share with us some of your ideas what you would do if you were in our shoes like that?
Okay, so you're another like SIP trunk provider, or wholesale, or
No, we provide services to retail customers. We
Okay,
act
to
as a
retail.
small carrier. Yeah.
Okay, so the main things are you start with the simple things like having switches that can do line rate forwarding, switches that can, when you connect to your providers, that when your internet providers, that they can actually handle a full speed of the connection. And a lot of routers process things in CPU or do some of these other things. So if you get a DDoS directly to the router, or a DOS text somewhere in the network, the router's the first thing to go. So it's having network gear that can handle it. The next thing is, even if you're not using the bandwidth, have the bandwidth available. It's not that expensive these days to ask for 1 gig or 10 gig links. There's plenty of providers that are in the $1 per meg rate.
We're in a data center where we have quite available bandwidth, so that's not an issue. I hear what you're saying.
Right, and making sure that if you are using a tier 3 provider, that their network gear is properly set up for DDoS, or that they're not going to die first. So that would be the first thing, is that your data center has adequate bandwidth, can provide you. That way, your whole business relies on that internet connection. And if somebody with a hacked 1 gig server can take you down, that's probably your weakest link right there. The next thing is having making sure all of your internal equipment can handle the line rate of your connections. The next thing would be making sure that you have some sort of plan to switch over, some sort of plan that if your servers start getting these, DNS bomb style attacks, that you have some sort of plan to switch to something, even if it's temporary. One thing I recommend that's really easy to do is get a mirror port off of your core router, which is obviously what we do, and then just record every IP that connects to your network. Just keep it in a database, timestamp, IP address. Now, worst case scenario, somebody starts blasting you, you just whitelist all the known IP addresses. And okay, so some of your soft client customers can't connect, I get that, but is 99.9% of your business still intact? Yeah. So easy, cheap, it doesn't take much of a server to do that sort of thing. And I also recommend having a network consultant that's a CCIE or somebody who understands DDoS mitigation on hand. Like, a lot of these companies will charge $200-300 a month just to keep them on retainer. To be perfectly honest, we have a massive CCIE company that we pay $1,000 a month to on retainer. We use them once every 3 months to throw ideas, do this, do that. But I can pick up the phone 3 in the morning, and I have this group of CCIE people that have to be woken up and help me if there's an absolute emergency. So those are the things that are the easiest. They're really inexpensive. Line rate routers are $3,000 now. Cisco 29 or 3560G can even do BGP. So $2,200, and you solve some of your easy problems. Sure.
one of the earlier security discussions, there was a comment made that people that get hacked or have problems don't generally share that. They don't want their shareholders to know unless you're required to because you're a public corporation, et cetera, et cetera. The question is, would a company like Vitelity ever produce a newsletter or produce an ongoing information stream of things that might have happened that might the customers might learn by or help to mitigate or help to apply to their own situation?
We haven't really talked about it. I think we're pretty bad at our own newsletters as it is. I think, our goal is to send out 2 a month. I think we send out 4 a year. So, I'd be happy to put together a sketch or a list of everything I talked about today. And if you guys put your information down on the paper, we'll email you, everything all of the ideas that I presented today. But as far as SIP security, I'm not aware of any other newsletters either. I think he had a question right next to you, right? No. Okay.
The software you were talking about earlier that you wrote that inspects the SIP packets and everything, where does that live? Like, where does that code actually run? And, in terms of the architecture of, your firewall and everything.
Okay, so all of our border routers are Cisco 6509s, which we connect to 4900Ms. And then the 4900M we do port mirroring off of into a set of servers that monitor every packet. So they're not actually in line, but they're getting a mirror of all the data. And then those servers record and watch and inspect every packet. During denial of service attacks, we do have a secondary network as well, where what we'll do is we'll route just port 5060 to a set of servers that inspect each packet as it passes through the network, and deciding if it's going to allow or deny so we switch so most of the time we're stateless, and then we add denies as we need to, and then we can go to stateful if it's a full-on attack. So yeah, those servers sit in. They look for things like, when we're in stateless, like I said before, they look for certain user agents, like friendly scanner, simple enough. User agents that have never connected to the network before. User agents that all of a sudden are using a lot of them when there used to be none of them, stuff like that. And then when we're in stateful mode, we actually we'll inspect each SIP packet, and if it's a registration, we'll actually look to see in that registration, is that account, that SIP account, somewhere inside of our network? If it's not, deny the packet. If it is, allow it through. And we make it pretty fast, keep it in memcache. So, it adds the smallest fraction of latency to each coming SIP packet, but we can actually say, hey, this person should be connecting to our network, this person should not. It obviously can present some issues, like I said, with soft clients first connecting, that use strange registration stuff, that sort of stuff. But if 99.9% of your business is intact during what somebody's trying to take you down, it's a reasonable trade-off.
Okay, as we're waiting for some more questions, if you can fill out the forms and start passing them to the center aisle. As soon as we're done, we're going to have a drawing for some prizes here. We got an iPod to give away, so get those filled out and passed over to the aisle. Okay, next question.
Hi. In a previous discussion, it was mentioned the fact that if blacklists grow to beyond a certain point, they can become a problem themselves. So I was wondering, do you have a mechanism to like expire all blacklist rules, or do you just keep the list growing and growing in your system?
Yeah, okay, so right now the whitelist isn't that big. The one thing about stateful routing is there's not a lot of routers that can handle, hundreds of thousands of entries in them. What we do have is a couple routers that can. Some higher end Juniper routers that can actually handle hundreds of thousands of IP addresses in the whitelist. One thing you can do if you're on a budget though, and you can't afford, $70,000 router just hanging out, is daisy chain Linux routers. It works perfect. I don't recommend it for the actual voice part of the packet. What you can do is just route the 5060, the main invites, registrations, state of the phone calls to the Linux routers. And especially with some of the new E3 1270 processors attached to like the Intel PT1000s. Sorry if I'm getting way too technical here, but it's the CPU and the server and then the actual network card. Those two together, you can actually add hundreds of thousands of entries into a Linux router. So you can do, so instead of blacklisting all the bad IP addresses, whitelisting all the good ones, if you're, you can add, pretty easily, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, almost 1 million whitelist routes with that network card and that processor together. So, and if you run out, you just throw another one. So $2,000, you got a full router that can handle all of your whitelisting capabilities.
Another aspect of security I wanted to ask your opinion about is, if you had any good experience or you have any recommendations with respect to securing your RTP and signaling to remote users, as well as to those you're peering with. So maybe you don't want your signaling to be unencrypted or your media to be unencrypted on the open internet or what have you, looking for suggestions to do that. Dealing with confidential information or whatever else you may not want it eavesdropped on.
Okay, well, especially with respect to Asterisk, there's not a ton you can do. What we do for some of our higher end clients who need the banks, for instance, what we'll do is we'll just use a Linux VPN connection and then just in the kernel routing rules, just route over the VPN. So what happens is you end up using Asterisk free switch or whatever, and then you don't have to actually make changes to the software or configuration or anything like that, and then you just route it right over the VPN. And it's when you set it up one time, it's really simple, and everything just routes over that instead. And that's, you're talking 5 minutes to set up a client, right? Once you do it the first time, of course, the first time's always a big giant pain in the ass, but come on, it's Linux.
As a co-location customer, how does your security implementation integrate with that? Are you monitoring all my 5060 traffic, or are you providing any protection?
Right now, we're statelessly monitoring all of your traffic, just as we're statelessly monitoring all of ours. We haven't actually had any of our customers attacked on a large scale. So part of the stateless monitoring is the stuff I mentioned before. If a certain amount of bad traffic comes in on your IP address, we block based on source IP address. So we'll block simple, obvious things like friendly scanner, or you weren't getting much SIP traffic. Now 4 IP addresses are blasting you. We'll just source block all of them automatically.